Hi, my name is Randall A, and you have landed on the Infertility Channel. Today we're going to talk about one of those big topics in reproductive medicine, in vitro fertilization, IVF. In fact, it's so big, we're going to give this 4 episodes and then down the road many more episodes to talk about the subtleties, the nuances of this technique. So in 1978, the first IVF baby was born in England, Louise Joy Brown. She was the product of much work by Dr. Patrick Steptoe and Robert Edwards. In fact, this was such a big deal, Dr. Robert G. Edwards, the physiologist who came up with the technique, was honored with the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Huge deal. Now, fast forward to 2013. More than 1 million babies have been born through this technique, and thousands more every year. So I want to go through the basic steps. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the types of IVF, then the risks of IVF, and then some of the subtleties. So IVF always starts with the ovary, and the normal human ovary produces just 1 egg in each menstrual cycle. So we have to find a way to get more eggs. In fact, the average number of eggs that we retrieve in our clinic is 11.5. We obviously don't get 11 or 12, but you get the idea. So anyway, we will turn the ovary off such that all of these follicles are resting and they're getting ready, and then we use medications, purified forms of follicle stimulating hormone or luteinizing hormone, those pituitary hormones that cause the ovaries to work. We give larger dosages than the physiological amount, and then the ovary is stimulated. In fact, we might have 5 or 6 or 7 eggs in each ovary. That's step 1. Step 2 means that we go across the upper vaginal sidewall, done under monitored anesthesia care, which is like twilight sleep. I tell my patients, you will not feel it, you will not remember it, you will not care about it. And one of my patients, I don't know what she does on the weekends, said it's like drinking 5 margaritas without a hangover. Anyway, so we're going to then get the eggs out. We have a needle that goes across the vaginal sidewall, just 1 puncture per side, and we collect the eggs on this side, then we do the same thing on the opposite side. All of those eggs go temporarily into test tubes. And by the way, in vitro means in glass. We don't use glass anymore, we use plastic. And test tube babies is a bit of a misnomer because we now use petri dishes. So you might consider these plastic petri dish babies rather than glass test tube babies. Anyway, so for about 4 to 6 hours, both the sperm and the egg will mature outside of the body. And then we add the sperm and the eggs together in the petri dish. It's important to realize that both the sperm and the egg have to mature outside of the body. If we were to place the sperm and the egg together immediately, fertilization rates will be very low, or if we wait too long. So that optimal window is about 4 to 6 hours. Now the eggs and sperm will meet in the petri dish and embryos will form. We will look at that petri dish the next morning and we should see the signs of fertilization. 5 days later, the embryo looks something like this, not quite this large, but it should have between 100 and 200 cells. That's called a blastocyst. And if you know what you're looking at, you can actually see one with the naked eye. It's a little pinpoint, a little bit smaller than the period at the end of a printed page in a textbook. We then place that embryo painlessly up to the top of the uterus, about 1.5 to 2 centimeters from the very top of the uterus, and under transabdominal ultrasound guidance, we're able to follow the path of that catheter and the injection of that embryo. It is painless, takes just a couple of moments to do, and then the tough part of IVF. The tough part of IVF is waiting for that pregnancy test 12 to 14 days later, depending upon the day of transfer. It's a long time, it seems like an eternity, but then we get the pregnancy test. I'll tell you an interesting story. We had a May-December marriage. The husband was 63, his wife was 37. He had grown children from the first marriage. And because he had had a vasectomy after all of them were born, he had to have his sperm extracted. So his adult children, son and daughter, went with him to the urologist to have his sperm extracted, and then were his nurses. Then some days later they came in and they were watching his new wife's eggs being extracted. But then the tough part of IVF, the embryo transfer. They didn't want their inheritance split too many ways, so this grown son and daughter were arguing with the parents, actually dad and stepmom, about how many embryos to transfer. She wanted 2, dad wanted 1, the kids wanted 1, ultimately mom won, and twins were born. So they had to split the inheritance now 4 ways instead of 2. One of those crazy things about IVF. Hey, thanks for joining me this week. If you have any questions or concerns, comments, please write below. Otherwise, hit subscribe. Tell your friends to hit subscribe. I'll see you back here next week. Thanks so much.